Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Premier League check-in podcast on a busy week for myself and Matt with our EFL hats on, being tested by the first 3-game week of the season. Matt, we'll go through the results in a minute, but still wins very, very scarce towards the bottom of the Premier League. But big results for Everton and for Bournemouth last night as well. Good morning, mate.
Good morning. How are you? I'm all right. I mean, I think it's interesting down the bottom. It might be week by week. We just tick one more off. So last week, what was it? We had 6 teams after 5 games without a win. And now week 6, we got 5. So it's gone from 6 after 5 and now 5 after 6. Maybe we'll have 4 after this week. I'm really enjoying the relegation sandwich, which is how I like to describe it. Some decent draws as well. Ipswich Town picking up one that we might come on to later. A big result for Bournemouth, as you say, because that was a game in which if they had lost, Southampton are trying to drag them in. So they've put some distance between themselves and Southampton. And yes, Everton with the big win that we'll come on to in a bit as well. But looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, let's bang through the results. And I will just pick your brain a bit about Southampton, because I think being it's the Monday night football, and I've kind of watched Russ Martin go a little bit epic in his interview post-game, let's just say this morning. So I'll get your take on that. So it's Newcastle 1, Man City 1. By God, Man City dropped points 2 games in a row. How about that? And the good news for the title race is Arsenal 4, Leicester 2. However, with our view on the teams we've covered in the EFL, Leicester still without a win. Brentford 1, West Ham 1. Brentford scoring in the first minute again. Chelsea 4, Brighton 2. Cole Palmer, full stop. Everton 2, Palace 1. Huge win. Huge win for Everton. I looked at my notes from last week and I wrote down a question I had to ask you. Can Everton beat Palace and pull them into the relegation zone? Yes. Forest 0, Fulham 1. It's been a brilliant start for Forest. They go under at home. Wolves 1, Liverpool 2. Wolves remain bottom. Ipswich 2, Villa 2. Really creditable draw for Ipswich. Man United 0, Spurs 3. Carnage at Old Trafford. And last night, Bournemouth 3, Southampton 1. Matt, sometimes I get a bit snobby with fans who don't necessarily watch the EFL, and we know everything about these teams, and then they come up and all of a sudden they're saying things that we've been saying all along. Maybe I'm the snob because, it's okay to just watch the Premier League. We get it. But we're now hearing what we hear about Southampton and what we hear about a Russ Martin side every single season. The setup was, is Russ Martin going to learn the lessons of Vincent Kompany? That's been the narrative cliche. If that question is accurate, Matt, the answer is just clearly no, isn't it? What is it that straightforward that Southampton are approaching this in completely the wrong way? Or have you got any defence for Russ Martin? 6 games, 1 point, 12 conceded, and it doesn't look good for Saints, does it?
No, it doesn't look good for Southampton. And on paper as well, I think they've had some fixtures that we would have thought they might have at least got 1 win by now. A couple of the home games in particular, I feel like on paper they'd have fancied a win there. When it comes to the football, it's not a great look for Russell Martin. Now, I think I expected him to carry on the way he was, because he's been like that at was it MK and then Swansea and now Southampton. So he's always had this style of football, possession, passing it out. But this is the Premier League. This is the most unforgiving league in the world. And if you make mistakes, you will be punished. You draw parallels to Kompany because it's similar in a way. He learnt the lesson the hard way. They got relegated. He ended up at Bayern Munich afterwards, which is interesting. You do wonder, are Southampton going to stick with this the whole way through, and could it come good, or will they have to change it knowing that it's not working? I mean, we've seen so many teams over the years come up playing a certain style of football and been told like, that won't work. I remember Bournemouth when they first came up with Eddie Howe. They used to play like sort of total football. It was crazy. And everyone was like, oh, well, if they do it like that, they'll get punished. But in the end, they stayed up for a good few years in the Premier League. Look, I've said before, and I think you'd agree, it'd be nice to see Southampton stay up and Russell Martin reaping the rewards of his style of play. But It's not working. And yes, they've been punished a few times, and Bournemouth, it just looked so easy for them. I mean, a couple of the goals yesterday, just way too easy. So they've got to learn. Otherwise, we could be seeing a casualty here soon in the shape of Russell Martin.
Do you think some of it's presentation? Because I don't want to be... I really like Russ Martin. I met him once and he was absolutely charming. But when... compared to Vincent Kompany, who you see on the Burnley documentaries talking about fighting and spirit and all of that and presenting in that way, and Russ Martin is always talking about how brave the players are, and there's a lot of buzzwords and what you'd call kind of corporate training type speak. And do you think there's almost a little bit of distrust that comes from the way he actually carries himself? And I hate to sound cruel about it, but perception is reality with these things, don't you?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I don't want to point the finger and say certain things about Russell Martin in terms of he's putting perhaps his own style of football before what's actually good for Southampton, because let's be honest, what's in Southampton's best interest this season is staying up. They'll take that however it comes. If they have to go long ball and low block and it gets them 17th, they'd take it. But as you say, maybe it's the sort of thing that Russell Martin himself sees himself as a brand. And if he is to move on to a bigger club, no disrespect to Southampton, but, every manager would like to work their way up, surely. Then he's going to stick with this philosophy, and he's got to hope that it works if it's going to be like this.
Yeah, he's definitely doubling down on brand Martin. Get your thoughts in the comments, and everyone's going to accuse me of rigging Matt's moment this week. This was Matt's idea. Let's go to Matt's moment. So for accusations of bias, I will say nothing more and say, Matt, the floor is yours. Let's do Matt's moment.
Yes, and I will confirm that Ben has not bullied me into saying Ipswich Town is Matt's moment. And it's interesting, isn't it? Who would have thought after 6 games without a win, we'd be still being positive about Ipswich? But context is key. They've got 4 points. They're quite comfortably above the bottom 3. But for now, their head is above water. And yeah, you think to yourself, given the fixtures as well that they've had to deal with, this is looking like a promising start. Yes, the main idea, the one without a win in 6 doesn't look great in a sense, but they've chucked on 4 points. I'm sure a win will come given the performances, and that's what's giving a lot of people encouragement with Ipswich Town. As I say, taking draws off Villa and Brighton as well. I mean, it's funny, I think we spoke yesterday that if Ipswich had 4 points after 6 games, we would have thought they might have beaten Southampton and drew with Fulham, lost to Villa and Brighton, but they've taken some good draws off decent teams, and the only teams they've lost to, Liverpool and Man City, which is incredible. I think it could be a positive as well that they've gone out of the Carabao Cup as well. Everything is on the league this season. And as we were saying about Russell Martin earlier and his philosophy and how he's going to stick to how he wants to play, you do feel like there's a bit more adaptability with McKenna, and I'm really enjoying what I'm seeing. I mean, when they came up to the Championship from League One originally, not many teams come up and blast themselves straight to the Premier League in today's financial world, but they absolutely went for it. They attacked it, and I did have a few reservations that if they come up to the Premier League and really attack and leave themselves open, as they did sometimes in the Championship, they could get punished. But we've seen them playing well defensively, the 0-0 draw at Brighton, hanging on in there when they can and knowing when to attack and when to sit off a little bit. In games like we said against Villa, that recent game, 2-2 at the weekend, they went 1-0 up, they go 2-1 down against a team that's absolutely flying, and it's about staying in the game and taking your chance when it came. And Delap, wow, what a goal that second one was. And having a look at the table, you can see Ipswich Town up to 15th. There's only 1 point between them and 18th, but we've said if you can keep a few other teams as well as the newly promoted teams in that bottom 6, you're giving yourself a chance. And like I say, right now, there's good cause to be optimistic for Ipswich. And there's a big game coming at the weekend against a team right next to them in the table.
Yeah, very well put. It's really difficult at the moment because until Ipswich win a game, that argument point is always a valid one, isn't it? So as much as somebody could not have seen a minute of Ipswich this season and look at the table and go, they're no good, they haven't won, You can, and you know, I get things tweeted to me. Some of them I think are fair. Some of them are obviously people just trying to pull your team down or whatever, saying, "Oh, you gotta beat this team, you gotta beat that team."
Yeah,
I think the only game where you would say, "Oh, that probably needs to be a win if you're going to stay in the league," is Southampton, because they came up, you know, the only team literally ranked below Ipswich from last season. But again, that was away from home and it was still drawn. So it's just been really, really difficult to get your head around the context. What I will say, Matt, is if I read you the next few fixtures, I think you'll kind of like where it's going. And I will accept the arguments from everybody of you need to win some games if they don't win any of these, because it now goes West Ham, Everton, Brentford, Leicester. So those next 4 games is, can you get a win, a draw, maybe another draw and get 5 points from the 4? But there is no Villa, Brighton, Liverpool, Man City in there. So I'm still finding it hard to get my head around. And fortunately, you're very kind of open and balanced to the idea that a team could be playing well and there could be cause for optimism without having won a game.
Yes, that's very true. I'll just say, before the season started, in my table predictions, I did have Ipswich in 17th. I think they were the only team I thought out of the 3 newly promoted that might get over the line. Is there a little bit of blind faith? Potentially, because I'd like to see a team that's not been in the Premier League for some time do well. But I also have been so impressed with the journey. I also, at the time, thought Leicester would be getting a points deduction. Now it looks like they won't. And I'm not going to say that completely changes how I see things. But I think the main thing for Ipswich Town is I just look at that club and everything screams positivity, because you've had back-to-back promotions. And like you say, if you look at these games, Liverpool 2-0 defeat. It's great to be back in the Premier League. You've lost to a team that's now top of the table. It's not the end of the world. Man City 4-1. Okay. I mean, you got a goal. That's, you know, it's not the end of the world. And then it was it Fulham after that, which is a decent point, first point of the season. The Southampton one, on paper, looking at those 6, was the most winnable, but the last minute goal, like I say, meant that Ipswich Town fans were walking out of St Mary's having a party. And then there was the 0-0 draw with Brighton. Any result there is amazing. And a draw with Villa as well. Everything is screaming positivity. And as you said, West Ham next. It couldn't be further from the other end of the spectrum in terms of there could be a bit of quite a lot of negativity there for West Ham, because they've started slow. You look at the table here, if Ipswich beat them, they overtake them, and West Ham are currently under a point per game. So I suppose if Ipswich walk out of West Ham with another draw, it keeps them chugging along. But yeah, you don't want to draw, and then say you lose the Everton game, and then it's like, oh, because then it takes a sudden dip. So you need to get that that first win, preferably before the next defeat, given the opposition that you've got coming up here. I mean, 4 massive games, you've got to say.
Yeah, and there's also the spectre of the international break that then comes after the next game. It would be massively helpful for any of those teams. We'll talk about it more in detail in a little bit. Wolves, Saints, Palace, Leicester, Ipswich, all of them would desperately love to get that first win. But get your thoughts in the comments. We'll clip that one out for Match Channel, a little bit of Ipswich chat there, and tell us where the line is between optimism and evidence in the form of a 1 going into the win column at some point there. Let's move us on, Matt, and we are going to Worldie of the Week. And for 2 weeks running, Matt, we have complete agreement on this one. James Justin, Swazzy curling right foot volley for Leicester against Arsenal. What did you like about it?
Wow, a lot. First of all, there's so many honourable mentions. I mean, this was a really difficult week. I think we've both seen all of the goals. There was the Cole Palmer free kick, which I absolutely love. I quite like how Mbeumo took his goal. Delap's second goal was really nice footwork. But I just love a volley like this from James Justin. And it was in the game as well. It was because he just scored to make it 2-1. They're away at Arsenal, who are title favourites. And this one levelled it up. And like I say, the way it's floated over quite deep from the left-hand side, it's sort of knee height. So he has to sort of take it on the turn a little bit. That's it. And then it bends, doesn't it? It takes a wicked bend and goes in off the post, which I love as well, and goes across the goal. And I love this goal. And right in front of the Leicester fans as well, so you see them cheering. The only problem is it wasn't ultimately the last goal. It would have been even better if it was the goal that got them a draw. Obviously, Leicester went on to lose the game. But just for the goal itself, it's my goal of the week. I love it.
Yeah, I really agree with you on that one. And I hate to say it, I was kind of following that game on my phone when I was at work. 35 shots, 4.6 XG. They were in the game, Leicester, but I think they scored I think Justin's first goal was deflected, and then an absolute worldie that's worldie of the week for the second. So I think had they got out of Dodge with a 2-2, they would have been celebrating that at the King Power. Just quickly, Matt, on the title race, I was very concerned a couple of weeks ago when Arsenal dared to draw a game. I think it was Brighton, wasn't it? Well, they're level with Manchester City and Liverpool are ahead. So do I need to calm down on my title race over after Arsenal drew with Brighton idea?
Yeah, probably. It's crazy, isn't it, in the today's title races in the Premier League, that if Manchester City draw 2 games, it's a crisis, isn't it? And Haaland didn't score this week as well. So you've got to admit, as a neutral, it's really nice to see it opening up. And we're not against Manchester City, but I just think it'd be nice to see a proper race and maybe a different team win it this year. And potentially, we've got 3 teams involved because, as you say, Liverpool are top now. And then you've got Man City and Arsenal, both on 14 points, separated by 1 goal difference. So I know it's only 6 games, it's early days, but the more the merrier. Even if one more team joined, I'm not sure if I see it personally. I know Chelsea and Villa have both been good this season, but I think when it gets to the nitty gritty right at the end of the season, it'd probably be 3, possibly just 2. Pleasantly surprised by Liverpool. It was always a bit like a wild card with Slot coming in, because we've seen great managers going out the door and then the new manager comes in and can't quite get them going. But Slot's doing fantastic. Liverpool, of course, won at Wolves. And then, like you say, Arsenal powered through in the end. I think, their fans will be relieved, especially after they conceded the late goal against Man City, that this time they got some late goals. And, like I say, Man City drawing to Newcastle opens things up. So it's, very open at the minute.
Right, let's dial into our favourite part of the league table, the bottom 6, 7, and have a look at the race for survival. Okay, let's update the survival race because we have learned stuff this week, and although it's moving very, very slowly, like kind of like the sun gradually setting on a nice day when you're out in the garden having a barbecue, you don't quite notice it changing, but it is changing, isn't it? Obviously, as we said at the top of the show, really big wins for Bournemouth, who are just not really looking like being involved in this again. They look too good for it. Everton, we'll talk about in a sec, but Everton are always kind of pegged as, they'll find their way out of this, after too long. And so we mentioned it last week as well, Matt. We think some pretty good news in terms of a takeover, but we'll go all in on that when we have that confirmed and we know more. Right. So Wolves are still bottom, Matt. That is one where I would say park it for a week. We don't learn too much when teams play against Liverpool. They're probably going to beat most of the teams down the bottom there. Someone might nick a draw at some point. So Wolves still in peril, and we talked about them a lot last week. They go to Brentford next week. And at the moment, Matt, Brentford are beating teams who are down at the bottom, aren't they? And are functioning as a mid-table team, which these fans were worried about. And that's worked out well. We spoke a bit about Southampton earlier in the show. That's looking a bit disastrous, Matt. Southampton go away to Arsenal at the weekend. So big problems there. Could you see Southampton bottom? Potentially. Now, let me bring you into the conversation now, because Palace are in the bottom three. And Palace, no one ever has anywhere near relegation because they're always going to finish 12th or 11th or wherever it is. But key result, I think they took the lead at Everton as well, didn't they? Talk to me about the significance of Everton 2, Palace 1, which now essentially flips the two teams around with Everton in 16th and Palace in 18th.
Yeah, I'll just start off addressing one or two of the comments we've had on a couple of these videos, because we do get one or two people saying, oh, you can't talk about a relegation battle in September and October. You're kidding yourself if you don't think it's as important now as it is in May. You know, it's some of these teams are going to be down there at the end of the season. That is a matter of fact. Yes, one or two might pull out, and one or two teams that are mid-table currently might fall in, but it is just as important now as in May. And yes, these are 6 pointers right now, and Everton did get the better of Palace. We said it'd be typical if it was a draw, didn't we? So slightly surprised that Everton won. And to be fair, credit to them, because this time they had to come from behind. And it's been the other way around for Everton so far this season, where they've taken the lead and sort of crumbled. Yeah, massive result for Everton. We've been speaking about this Premier League relegation battle so far this season in context of who gets the first win. That could be really crucial. But it's now just a matter of looking at the points maybe a bit more as well, because you can see Everton have picked up their first win, but they're still behind Ipswich, who've not won because Ipswich are pulling out quite a few draws. So I think, as we said before, possibly 34, 35 to survive this season in terms of points. So you want to stay close-ish to a point per game. I don't think you necessarily need it, but if you're a team such as Ipswich, who've just come up and you want to just get over the line this season, if you're averaging just under 2 points, say you're after 10 games, you're 8 points and you're sort of close to it, you've got a chance of getting out of this. Massive result for Everton. They'd only picked up one win coming into this weekend. They go up to 16th now. As you say, Palace go into the bottom three. Not massively concerned for Palace, given it's 6 games, and I think in seasons gone by, we've seen them on bad runs and near trouble, but ultimately, I think
Matt, Liverpool next for Palace.
Yeah, well, yeah, it could be a case that they might stay in there for another week or two, or maybe even up until Christmas. I just look at the squad and ultimately think they should get a move on, but that is not a certainty. So, you know, if you're an Ipswich, a Leicester, a Southampton fan, you're happy to see them staying down there. We said about Wolves last week that we were a bit concerned, and then I also followed it up by saying, and I don't see them moving anywhere soon, because they had Liverpool. They've got a big game against Brentford this week, and then it's Man City and Brighton away. So, you know, it might take a few weeks for Wolves to push out. And while those teams like Palace and Wolves have the difficult fixtures, that's where Leicester and Ipswich have got to try and capitalise to make a bit of a buffer between them. So, yeah, really fascinating at the moment. Not a lot in it, I think. Well, it's very early days. I'm looking at 14th downwards at the minute as teams that could be involved. But yeah, that's maybe my cut-off line for now.
Well, that was going to be my kind of next point, is that when do we need to discuss West Ham? We'll get on to them. Just quickly mention Leicester, who I don't have a good feel about this, because I don't hear the positivity kind of from the fan base about what's going on. It feels like the most positive thing that's happened for Leicester this season is the lawyers, you know, managing to find that loophole in the points deduction thing. And, you know, that's not a great state of affairs, is it? Leicester play Bournemouth next week. And if we've pegged Bournemouth correct, then Bournemouth are going to do well against these teams that we're chatting about right now. So let's talk about West Ham, because absolutely fascinatingly, it's West Ham versus Ipswich next week. So the one way you can guarantee to suck West Ham into this, if you're Ipswich, is to go there and win. Now, as an Ipswich fan, you kind of look at it and you know, oh, well, West Ham away, massive stadium. They won the European Conference League. They've, you know, been a really, really good side. You're not going to go to West Ham and win, are you? But I've had quite a few messages on Twitter and in the YouTube comments of, mate, I fancy your chances next week, from West Ham fans, Matt, saying, we're not very good. It's not working very well under Lopetegui. So, I mean, can you circle a fixture away at West Ham? That would be such a massive result for Ipswich if they could pull not only to get that first win, but that would then pull West Ham in a little bit as well, wouldn't it? And we know those fans are demanding, and we know they won't suffer a manager underperforming for long there, will they?
No, it's a very good point. I sometimes look at the London Stadium and I'm thinking easy to go under if you're an away team, but also sometimes you can turn them on their own team, turn that fan base against them. It's a big game already, isn't it? You look at the table, West Ham, as I say, 5 points, Ipswich 4 points. It's difficult, this. I really do think Ipswich have a chance. And if you look at what a lot of the other fans in the league are saying about Ipswich, I mean, I've seen so many positive things from the Villa fans. They were like, you guys are staying up if you play like that. I know it's only one game. But then the difficult thing with the context is you'd think to yourself, a team that draws with Villa and Brighton is more than capable of beating West Ham, given where they are at the moment. But then I suppose we thought similar when Ipswich went to Southampton. I think we both predicted them to win. Okay, they didn't lose. They got out with a last-minute draw. I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, I certainly think Ipswich are capable of taking the 3 points, but I would still look at this as a draw is not bad. It keeps West Ham from getting away, and then you're playing them at home later in the season. You know, this is the away game where you take a draw, you may be still growing into the season. If you then beat them back at Portman Road in March or April, whenever it is, that would be 4 really good points against this team. So I know Ipswich fans really want that win, but is a draw not a bad result? I don't think it is.
Get your thoughts in. That's a quick précis on a fascinating, when you actually go through it team by team and what's coming up, a fascinating survival fight. Answer me these questions, guys, in the comments. Are Wolves going to stick in there for a while? Matt's looked at the fixtures and maybe they might. Southampton, are they as doomed as people are suggesting with the style? Palace and Everton, are they obviously going to get out? Leicester is kind of, what's the word? Sort of not engaged in the way that other promoted teams have been at the moment. And can Ipswich pull West Ham in? Give us your thoughts in the comments. Yeah, we've run a bit long here, Matt. So we'll be quick with Mouthwatering matchup. I have to say, not a massive standout one for me here. So let's just mention a couple. Palace Liverpool is significant at both ends. Leicester Bournemouth could be massive if Leicester can pull Bournemouth in. And we've mentioned West Ham versus Ipswich. It doesn't feel sort of a vintage weekend in terms of, right, here's your big head-to-head. What's your take just quickly on a possible mouth-watering matchup?
I mean, Brentford Wolves might be all right. And Villa Man United could be interesting. But yeah, I think we've got to pick up on Palace Liverpool because it's two teams we've not mentioned a lot so far today. And as you say, significant at both ends of the table. And with Palace having the home advantage, maybe just gives a bit more of an edge to this one. Whereas if it's at Anfield, I'm thinking Liverpool should win. But I still think Liverpool are much the favourites here. But we've seen in seasons gone by, Palace are more than capable of taking points off top teams, including Liverpool. Of course, there was that 3-3 all those years ago, wasn't there? Really big game because if Palace get a result like this, it'd be seen as a statement result, which you then think would be followed by a good run and they'd get away from trouble. But if you're a fellow team down there, supporter, you're hoping Palace lose and they just stay down there for another week and they struggle to get out of this. And once again, if you're an Arsenal or Man City fan, keeping an eye on this, you want a Liverpool slip-up because Liverpool they've been pretty faultless, but then there was that defeat to Forest, which was a bit of a surprise. And I suppose this one would be seen as a surprise. So not impossible Palace might get something. It's really interestingly poised.
There you go. So we make Palace Liverpool our mouth-watering matchup. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Premier League Check-In podcast. You can find myself and Matt collaborating each and every round with the League One predictions as well. And if you're watching here on the Benjamin Bloom Football Channel, do head over to Matt's channel as well. There's Premier League predictions over there if that's your thing. And we always kind of clip out the main topic from the show to put up on Matt's channel as well. Matt, we're going to be back tomorrow doing more League One predictions. How am I going to get through this crazy week, mate?
I don't know. We'll do it together, mate. At least we've got an international break if you need to just sit back.
Oh, you hate them, though.
I hate them, but maybe, we just need to sort of de-stress a little bit. Lots of content, guys. So please do get involved. We're doing lots of League One predictions. Of course, we do our separate Championship and Premier League predictions. So if you're enjoying the Premier League Check-In podcast, do make sure to check out our Premier League predictions and see what we think will happen in these games. And then, we'll be back next week to reflect on the action during an international break.
We'll see you next week.